we would hope if the thing is, if the foreign matter is large enough and different enough from gummy that it would be self-limiting.
Yeah.
It would be obvious, self-evident, and therefore self-limiting. And, any adult who's rational and not, whatever, I don't know, intoxicated or something like that would pick the thing up and say, well, this is crazy. What is this? And immediately, they would not ingest it. So I would think the risk is relatively low. It's on the risk scale, as far as an adverse event goes, the risk is relatively low. But what people can do is they can make a mountain out of a molehill.
Yeah.
And that's where I think liability is a bigger issue here than the actual risk. The safety risk.
Got it. I was reading up on the FDA website. There's a CPG section 555.425 foods adulteration involving hard or sharp foreign objects. And they have some pretty specific size limitations. And they say that if an object is 7 millimeters to 25 millimeters, which is roughly quarter inch to an inch, and the product is ready to eat, which this would be, it's considered an adulterated within the meaning of 21 USC 342A1. Do you have, I'm sure you've heard of that. Do you feel that this would fall into that?
If it's general to foods, I would say yes, it probably does. I'm not intimately familiar with that regulation because it's not specific to supplements, but supplements are legally a category of foods. And hold on, I think my son is home. Yeah, I'm on the phone, but you can come in. Supplements are legally a category of food. Mm-hmm. So if the law or the regulation in the U.S. refers generally to food, it includes supplements unless it says otherwise.
Okay, so this would include supplements as well.
Right, because if it refers generally to food and does not carve out supplements separately, then it would include supplements. So I think that would be a reasonable interpretation that you just made, that it does apply and that it would apply in this case. I think that the spirit of the regulation was more intended for conventional foods, ready-to-eat cereal, something like that, not gummy or tablets or capsules that would be ingested in a supplement. The real intent is for conventional foods, but as far as the FDA is concerned, if it doesn't specifically carve out supplements, then it does apply.
Okay. Yeah. And then another question was, what's it's unrealistic to expect, of course in an ideal world you want 0 out of all the products you produce to ever have any of this. But what's reasonable to expect? Is 1 in a million allowed? Is 1 in 10 million? What's the quote-unquote acceptable defect rate of something like this?
Yeah, that's a great question because it's funny because FDA will not define that threshold. It's like they'll say something, this is kind of a crude analogy, but it's like what's the definition of pornography? Well, it's not defined, but you know it when you see it. So FDA takes a similar approach with adulteration in that it's not necessarily a threshold effect. Overages, for example, that you put in your gummies, you put in overages, right? FDA doesn't define what is too much of an overage, right?
Yeah.
But if you had 1,000 times what you were supposed to, of vitamin A, let's say, agency would say that's adulterated, right? But they never give you a line that you can't cross.
Right.
So it's probably similar in this case, and particularly with the supplement GMP, the agency would come back to you and say, manufacturer, what is your specification that you think is reasonable? And